"You always make everything about you," she said. The door didn't slam. She didn't cry. She just walked upstairs. And that was somehow worse, like she'd done it before. I stood in the kitchen, fingers still wrapped around a spoon I hadn't used. The kettle had already gone cold. I couldn't remember what I was boiling water for. On the counter, my husband's phone, face down. He always left it that way. On the fridge, a drawing she made when she was 9. A house, 3 people. I wasn't in it. I never asked why. The TV was on in the living room. Something was laughing. A studio audience. I don't know why the laughter made my stomach twist. I opened the fridge and closed it again. I didn't need anything. I just needed to touch something that still made a sound when I held it. Upstairs, the floor creaked. Not in apology, just as fact. She hadn't said she hated me, but hate would have been cleaner. It's the disappointment in her voice I can't scrub off my skin. If you've ever kept quiet so your child wouldn't have to choose sides, if you've ever stood in your own kitchen and felt like a guest in your family's story, leave a comment. You're not the only one who stayed too long for love. Subscribe if you're ready for stories that don't scream but still cut deep. I didn't plan to say it today. I didn't even plan to speak. I just asked your father what time he'd be home tomorrow. And he said, "Why, you leaving or something?" With that half laugh he uses when he's testing me. Like it's a joke until it's not. And I said, "Maybe I should." That's all I said. Not, "I'm done." Not, "You ruined everything." Not, "I can't keep doing this." Just, "Maybe I should." And you were standing in the hallway. I didn't even see you at first, but I heard your voice before I saw your face. You said, "God, Mom, you're so dramatic." Then you rolled your eyes and walked away, like I'd just spilled milk. Like this was all about my bad mood. Like 17 years of holding my breath for this family meant nothing. Like the only story that mattered was his, and yours, never mine. I know I'm not perfect. God, I know. I know I talk too softly. I know I let things slide too long. I know I say it's fine even when it's not. But do you know how many times I've put myself second for him? For you? Do you know what it's like to sit in the car for an extra hour so he can cool off before I walk in the door? Do you know what it's like to hear your own child take his side before you even know what the fight is? You said I was ruining everything, but I already watched it rot for years. I stayed for you. I stayed when I knew he was lying. I stayed when I knew he loved the idea of me more than the woman standing in front of him. I stayed when the only thing we had in common was your school calendar. You want to call that weak? Call it whatever you want. But I hope one day, when you're older and sitting in your own kitchen at 2 a.m., trying to record a message no one will ever hear, I hope you remember this part. I didn't leave because I stopped loving you. I left because I finally started remembering how to love me. End of recording. No title, no outro, just silence. He didn't apologize. Not really. But the next morning, the coffee was already made. He added cinnamon like he used to when we still shared things. He said he'd cleared his schedule to be more present. He looked at me like a man who had just remembered he had a wife. I didn't say much, just nodded, sat down, and let the cup warm my hands. Later that day, my daughter asked if I wanted to go for a walk. We hadn't done that in years. She said, "Just us, okay?" And I heard something in her voice that sounded like, not guilt exactly, more like self-preservation. We walked to the park. I remember the gravel crunching under our shoes. She didn't hold my hand, but she didn't pull away either. She said, "I didn't mean what I said last night." I looked at her. Not too long. Just enough for her to know I heard. Then she said, "I don't want our family to fall apart." I almost told her it already has, but I didn't. I just nodded again and said, "Neither do I." That night, they both made dinner. Chicken, rice, too much effort. They set the table like it was Thanksgiving, not a Tuesday in April. He poured me wine. She asked about my favorite book. It felt like a stage play, too rehearsed, too careful, like they'd agreed on a script and weren't sure who'd forget their lines first. And still, part of me wanted to believe it, not because it felt real, but because I was tired of everything that didn't. I wanted to believe we could glue the pieces back together if we just smiled hard enough, if we said family like a spell. But spells don't fix rot. They just hide it under better lighting. I slept in my bed that night. He didn't try to touch me, but he did turn toward me instead of away. I stared at the ceiling and told myself, maybe this time we'll choose each other on purpose. I didn't believe it, but God, I wanted to. The house got quiet again, but not in the way I needed. It was the kind of quiet you get after a storm, when trees are still standing, but you know their roots are cracked. He was suddenly helpful. He fixed the leaky faucet, paid a bill before I saw the notice, started using a calendar, even changed his phone password, which he said was for work security. I nodded. I didn't ask. My daughter hugged me before school that week. It felt stiff, like a routine she didn't fully remember. She texted more often, left notes, "Love you, hope you're okay," but never once said the word sorry. Not even a version of it. We had dinner 3 nights in a row. They talked about shows I didn't watch, plans I hadn't agreed to. He asked if I wanted to go away for the weekend. Just us, clear our heads, he said. I said I'd think about it, and I did. Not because I wanted to go, but because I wanted to see how he'd react if I said yes. I started noticing patterns again. His shirts smelled like laundry, but his skin didn't. He used to hum when he got home. He stopped. My daughter looked at him too quickly when I brought up vacation, like she was checking something. Little things. The kind of things you can't prove, but you feel them anyway, in your gut, your teeth, your sleep. He brought home a new journal for me, said it looked like the kind I liked. Leather, soft brown, cream pages. He said, "I thought you might want to write things down again." I smiled, because he remembered I used to write, not because I believed the gesture. There was nothing wrong. Not really. Not yet. But I kept waking up with my jaw clenched and the feeling that someone was saying my name from very far away. I started leaving the light on in the bathroom at night. Not for safety, for evidence. It started with a laugh. One of those clipped high laughs my daughter does when she's uncomfortable. I was in the hallway, sorting laundry. She didn't see me. She was in the kitchen talking to him. And I heard her say, "Well, she doesn't have to know, right?" Then silence. Then their voices lowered, too low for me to make out the words. But the energy changed, like a secret slid into the room and no one wanted to drop it. That night, I asked what they were talking about. He blinked, too long, then said, Just bills, school stuff, nothing serious. My daughter nodded too fast, didn't look me in the eye. I smiled, because what else do you do when your family lies to you gently? 2 days later, I found a receipt in the trash. A dinner for 2, fancy place. Not mine, not her. I asked if they went out. He said, that must be old, from before. But the date was last week. The night I had the migraine. The night they both said they were ordering in. I said, nothing. That's the part that changed me. The not asking. The letting them lie. There was power in it, a strange kind. Like I'd been pressing my hands against a wall for years, only to realize I could just step back. I started listening more closely. My daughter's voice when she talked to him, too sweet, like apology made into habit. His voice when he talked to me, too soft, like someone handling a box marked fragile resentfully. They weren't mean. That's what made it harder. They were careful. And careful is what people become when they know you're getting close. I don't remember the exact moment the shift happened. Maybe it was when he sent flowers, just because, but signed the card with my name spelled wrong. Only one N. After 17 years? Or maybe it was when my daughter started calling him Dad like a weapon, only in front of me, only when he'd done something sweet. I began writing things down, not in the journal he gave me. That one stays empty. Looks nice on the table, though. I bought a cheap spiral notebook from the corner store. I keep it under the sink behind the cleaners. Receipts, times, words. I don't know what I'm building yet, but I know what it isn't. A story where I'm the one being rewritten. I wasn't looking for anything. I was just cleaning. That's the truth, or at least part of it. There were papers stacked in the bottom drawer of his desk. He's always said I get too emotional about bills, so he handles them. That was our arrangement, one of many that looked fair on paper. I pulled them out to shred them, that's all, but the second page had my name in the wrong handwriting. It was an account transfer, a loan, $42,000 taken from our shared equity line, authorized with my name, but I never signed it. The signature was close, but not mine. I loop my R's. Whoever did this didn't know that. And there it was, a note in the corner. For education and relocation support, Jennifer. Jennifer, our daughter. I sat there, knees on the carpet, holding the paper like it might catch fire. I don't know what hurt more, that he forged my name or that she let him. They used my name, my credit, my silence to fund her move across the country, to help her start fresh, to get away from me. I remember the day she told me she needed space, that she needed time to breathe. I helped pack her boxes, folded her sweaters, labeled each one like I was helping her go to college again. She hugged me at the door. She said, "Thank you for always putting me first." And I believed her. I really did. I checked the dates. The loan was approved 4 days before she had that conversation with me, before she cried, before she said she didn't want to choose sides. She already had. They both had. I just hadn't read the script yet. I didn't cry. I didn't throw the papers. I didn't scream. I stood up, made tea, sat at the table, and wrote down every single date. This isn't heartbreak. This is math, numbers, timelines, receipts, truth when it stops pretending to be love. I think they thought I'd never find out, Or maybe they thought I would, and by the time I did, I'd be too tired to care. Maybe they were right, but tonight, I'm not tired, not in the way they hoped. I'm not falling apart, I'm taking inventory, and when I leave, it won't be out of pain, it'll be out of clarity. I said nothing. When he asked how my day was, I said fine. When she called to check in, I asked how the weather was. When they smiled at me across the table, I smiled back, because it was easier to look like I was healing than to show them I'd already begun leaving. I kept every receipt, every text. I screenshotted timestamps. I recorded the pauses between their lies. Not because I wanted revenge, but because I wanted clarity. I needed to remember who I was and what I survived when they started rewriting the story again. He started holding my hand more. I let him. She started tagging me in old photos. I commented with hearts. I used to cry after these gestures. Now, I just wrote the date down. There is power in silence. When you stop asking, people show their true version of care. When you stop explaining, you see who listens without needing context. And when you stop reacting, you become something terrifying to people who depend on your confusion. I kept dinner light. I kept the house clean. I kept my voice even. He joked that I seemed peaceful lately. I said, yeah, things feel clear now. He didn't ask what that meant. He never does. I watched them. The way she laughed louder when I was in the room. The way he made calls in the garage again. The way their stories didn't line up, but they still looked at me like I was lucky to have them at all. I thought about the version of me I used to be, the woman who begged for answers, who stayed up refreshing text threads, rereading tone, who said, I'm sorry first, just to keep the room soft. She's gone, not because she died, but because I finally told her, you've done enough. I've got it from here. I started carrying a folder in my purse, notebooks, documents, copies. I started watching legal videos in the bathroom with the fan on just in case they walked by. I researched timelines, joint accounts, asset division, while they watched Netflix. I said, I love you when it made sense to. I hugged back. I laughed when I had to. But I wasn't in it anymore. I was already on the other side, building a woman who doesn't need anyone's permission to leave. Let them think they won. Let them feel like the storm passed. Let them sleep soundly. They won't hear the thunder until I've already packed the sky. It was a Tuesday. Not symbolic, not dramatic. Just a day I didn't feel like pretending anymore. I'd already been to the bank that morning, closed the joint savings, transferred what was legally mine, opened a new account in a name I hadn't said out loud in years, my maiden one. The woman at the counter said, starting over? And I said, no, starting correctly. That night, he brought home wine, her favorite. She was visiting. They were laughing. The kind of laughter that only happens when someone thinks they've made it out of the woods. I set the envelope on the table. Neither of them touched it right away. He said, "What's this?" I said, "Just some updates. You'll want to read it carefully." He opened it. She leaned over his shoulder. Her face changed first. He was slower, still reading like it could be undone mid-sentence. Inside, a notice of separation, a financial record of every unauthorized transaction, a statement of intent to pursue legal action, a list of what I was claiming as mine. Short, clean, precise. No insults, no emotions, just facts. He said my name, low, like a warning. She said, "You're overreacting." I stood, picked up my tea, and left the room. The next morning, I changed the locks. Legally. It was still my name on the deed. Funny how that part didn't seem to matter to them until now. She called me 6 times that night. No voicemails, just missed calls. Then a text. "This is so unnecessary, Mom. We could have worked through it." No apology, just an invitation to crawl back into the story they'd built for me. The role of forgiver, cleaner, peacemaker. I didn't answer. He showed up 2 days later, banged on the door like he still lived there. I opened the curtain just slightly. He looked smaller, like a man who couldn't figure out how he lost something he never thought I'd leave with. He shouted, "You're not thinking clearly." I smiled to myself because I've never seen anything more clearly in my life. The first time I ever said no out loud, they heard it like thunder, and by then, the storm was already past them. It wasn't a courtroom at first. It was a table, long, wooden, polished for the occasion. Mediation day. He brought a lawyer. She brought a folder. I brought every single copy I'd made over the last 6 months. The room had air conditioning, but my palms stayed warm. Not from nerves, from knowing. From remembering every time I'd stayed silent just to keep the peace. From knowing that today I wouldn't. His lawyer started with words like misunderstanding and miscommunication. He leaned back like someone ready to be consoled. I didn't look at him. I looked at the mediator and said, "I have documentation of identity misuse, unauthorized financial transactions, and falsified consent forms." I said it gently, because the truth doesn't need volume, just space. I laid the papers out, one by one. Dates, accounts, receipts, signatures that weren't mine, texts that contradicted the stories they told me, screenshots, emails, all in order. Her name showed up more than his. That hurt, still, but I didn't flinch when it did. The mediator asked questions. I answered clearly. He spoke twice. Once to say he didn't remember doing that, once to say, "Is this really necessary?" She didn't speak at all, just looked down at her hands, like maybe they weren't hers anymore. I didn't cry. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't ask why, because I already knew. They did it because I let them believe I wouldn't leave. Outside that room, people whispered. Family members texted. Some said they didn't want to take sides. Some said I should have just forgiven and moved on. Some were quiet, the loudest kind of betrayal. But I didn't need them. I had the truth, and I had the silence that followed it. The kind of silence you earn when you finally say the thing you were never supposed to say. 2 weeks later, a relative forwarded me a post my daughter made. She wrote, "People don't understand how hard it is when your mom walks out of your life." I didn't respond, because she was right. They don't understand, and she never told them the whole story. The truth is, I didn't walk out. I was pushed, over time, with smiles, with softened lies, until the edge felt like a natural place to stand. And when I finally stepped off, they called it abandonment, but I called it survival. The house is smaller, 2 bedrooms, 1 bath, a window that sticks when it rains, but it's mine. No one else's name on the lease, no one else's shoes by the door, no second toothbrush to explain. The first morning, I didn't set an alarm. I still woke up early, habit, but it was different. No footsteps outside my door. No one asking about breakfast. No one sighing because I forgot to buy oat milk again. Just the sound of the kettle, the hum of the fridge, the clink of my own spoon in my own cup. I sat at the table, in the quiet, and realized no one here is pretending to love me today, and that's a gift. I bought a plant, a little fig. The man at the store said they're hard to keep alive. I said, we'll see. There's a bookstore 3 blocks down. I walk there on Saturdays. They know my name now. They ask about my reading list. Not my marriage, not my daughter, just what I'm into this week. Sometimes I say fiction. Sometimes I lie and say I've read more than I have. But I always leave with something that doesn't talk back. I'm not angry anymore. That surprised me. I thought I'd carry that flame forever. But the truth is, when you stop explaining your pain, it softens, it settles, like dust after a long war. Now I just keep the door locked, not because I'm afraid, but because I finally get to choose who walks in. They still reach out, sporadically. My daughter sent me a birthday text, just one line, "Hope you're doing okay." I didn't answer, not because I hate her, but because I'm not ready to be her mirror again, not until she's ready to see me without distortion. Some nights are quiet in the wrong way. Stillness can echo if you're not careful, but most nights, it's just still. I light a candle, I read, I talk to myself out loud sometimes, and no one calls me crazy for it. Freedom isn't loud. It's not an announcement. It's walking barefoot in your own hallway and not flinching at every creak in the floorboards. It's saying, I don't want to go, and not being asked, why not? It's trusting the sound of your own breath in a room that only holds you. I used to think telling the truth meant losing people. Now I know the ones who leave when you speak clearly were never listening to begin with. They tell you not to make it public, to keep the family story quiet, to protect reputations, to let time smooth it out. But silence didn't save me. It just buried me deeper. So no, I won't shut up for their comfort. Not now. Not after everything. Here's what's true. I was never crazy. I was exhausted. I wasn't cold. I was ignored. I didn't cold. I let go of people who already let go of me. I'm not bitter. I'm not better. I'm just clear. If my daughter ever asks why I walked away, I'll tell her this. Because I finally learned that love isn't proven by how much pain you can hold, but by how gently you hold yourself when no one else does. I'm not here to rewrite what happened. I'm here to name it, to own it, to say it out loud so it doesn't rot in my body anymore. I'm not asking for anyone to understand, not begging for forgiveness, not trying to sound brave. This isn't a testimony. It's a quiet release. And if you're listening, if you've ever sat in your own house wondering how you became a stranger in your own life, I want you to hear this. You don't have to wait until they believe you to leave the room. You don't have to be perfect to start over. You don't have to be healed to be free. Final line, the only one I needed all along. I'm not the woman who stayed. I'm the woman who finally chose herself.